With Bermuda's annual Cup Match Classic sidelined amid the COVID-19 pandemic, CITV is gearing up to show a series of exciting programs featuring some of the most sensational and breathtaking matches played over the last 30 and Somerset Cricket Club.
Goes to Basin, and Basin comes forward, and he's out. Catch. He's out. A catch. He's out.
Finest hours of the intense matches played between the two teams as they battled for the coveted Cup Match trophy.
Oh, he's bowled! He is bowled!
Tune in to CITV on Thursday, July 30th, Friday, July 31st, and August 1st and 2nd to catch highlights of these thrilling matches that capture the excitement, spirit, and history of Bermuda's annual Cup Match Classic.
Good afternoon, Bermuda. Welcome to tonight's COVID-19 press conference. Joining me today are the Minister of Health, the Honorable Kim Wilson, the Minister of National Security, the Honorable Renee Ming, and the Minister of Public Works, the Honorable Lieutenant Colonel David Birch. We will start our press conference this evening with remarks from the Minister of Health on the latest updates regarding the coronavirus pandemic. Minister of Health.
Today, there were 555 test results received by the Ministry of Health, and 2 were positive for COVID-19. Both 2 new cases were imported on the Delta Airlines flights from Atlanta on the 27th of July, 2020. Bermuda now has 156 total confirmed positive cases, and their status is as follows. There are 6 active cases who are all under active public health monitoring and none in hospital or in critical care. A total of 141 have recovered, and the total deceased remains at 9. Excuse me. The average age of all of our confirmed positive cases is 59, and the age range of all of our positive cases is from 18 to 101 years. Overall, 54% of all cases are Black, 40% are white, and 6% are other or unknown. The source of all local cases is as follows. 52 are imported, 85 are local transmission with known contact, unknown contact, and none are under investigation. Bermuda's country status remains at sporadic cases, and the 7-day average of our real-time reproduction number is less than 1. As we enter the Cup Match weekend, some of you may have travel plans for the holiday period. I would urge those individuals and anyone considering travel over the next few weeks to read the Ministry of Health's travel advice for residents, which is currently posted at coronavirus.gov.bm. To be clear, in order to limit the spread of COVID-19, the Ministry of Health advises that Bermuda residents should avoid all non-essential overseas travel until further notice. Keep in mind that many countries have put in place travel or border restrictions, and new restrictions may be imposed with little warning. Therefore, your travel plans may be severely disrupted, and you may be forced to remain outside of Bermuda longer than expected, incurring additional expenses. If you are thinking about traveling off the island during the COVID-19 pandemic, you should consider the following. Anticipate a greater risk of exposure if traveling by public means, such as bus, train, or airplane, and take enhanced measures to protect yourself, such as wearing a mask, practicing physical distancing, washing your hands frequently, and using hand sanitizer often. Explore with your employer any quarantine restrictions that you will be required to adhere to in your workplace upon your return. Ensure that you have sufficient finances and necessities, including medication, in case your travels are disrupted. Understand the risk of your safety and security abroad. Make sure that you are up to date on measles, mumps, and seasonal flu vaccinations, and ensure you pack extra alcohol-based hand sanitizers and non-perishable foods, and be prepared to clean and disinfect your travel lodgings. If you must travel during COVID-19 pandemic, there are certain things that you must do during your trip, and these include the following. Avoid large crowds or crowded areas. Avoid contact with sick people, especially those with cough, fever, or difficulty breathing. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water and use hand sanitizers, and wear a mask in all public settings. Upon return to Bermuda, you must comply with all testing and quarantine requirements. You will find the latest information by clicking on the Travelers tab on the coronavirus.gov.bm. If you cannot get a COVID test in the country that you are visiting, you will be required to quarantine for 4 days upon your return home. There are also specific return to work standards which employers and employees should follow, and these can also be found on the coronavirus.gov.bm page. They group employers into one of 3 workplace settings: low risk, medium risk, and high risk, which then will dictate how an employee should proceed when returning to work after their travel. Returning residents who work in high exposure risk settings must quarantine for 14 days and have a day 14 negative test for clearance to return to work. This would apply to workers with close, sustained contact with the public and include institutional settings, for example, care homes, patient care settings, corrections, and health professionals. This is because institutionalized settings have a higher density of population, closer interaction where it is difficult to physically distance, and in some more vulnerable populations. Therefore, the risk of COVID-19 spread is higher in these settings, and the gold standard for COVID-19 prevention should be instituted. For those who work in medium risk settings, such as retail stores, construction site, police, public transportation, and schools and camps, they have 2 options. They can either adopt a 14-day quarantine until their 14-day results are returned. Employees can work remotely if that is possible. Or they should wait for 3 negative test results before the employee returns to work following the travel. These settings can implement physical distancing. However, a balance between testing and reconfiguring the work environment can provide some safety when returning to work. 3 negative test results within an incubation period for COVID-19 provides a level of insurance. For those who work in low-risk settings, such as remote workers and office workers without frequent close contact with others, return to work requires compliance with the normal traveler quarantine and the testing regime, as they can work remotely and would not be at an increased risk of exposing their colleagues or the members of the public. These workers do not have close, sustained contact with other persons and therefore are of a low risk to transmit the virus. And as always, before I step away from the microphone this evening, I want to urge residents to continue to wash your hands frequently, use hand sanitizer before and after entering any store or public building, shield our medically vulnerable, avoid congregating in large groups, and continue to wear your mask and keep 6 feet apart if you are not wearing one. I want to stress that plastic face shields are no substitute for a mask. Face shields may be worn in addition to, but not instead of, a mask. Recent studies have shown that face shields do not protect you or others from COVID-19 as well as a mask does. While on the topic of mask wearing, I want to remind all summer camps that adults and students over the age of 10 must wear a mask if they are not physically distancing more than 6 feet apart from each other while inside. Also, I want to remind diners and restaurateurs that there is still a maximum of 10 diners allowed per table, and that there is a continuing requirement for them to wear masks whenever moving around the restaurant or not at their table. And these rules are enforceable by law, and they apply equally to bars and liquor license establishments. I know this Cup Match holiday weekend will be completely different from anything we have ever enjoyed in the past. No game, no large gatherings with families or friends, but I truly hope that each of you finds joy and takes a chance to connect with those that you love, over the next few days. It will be different, but it can still be fun, and it can still be meaningful. Cup Match can still be whatever it always has been to you. So, again, I wish you all a happy Cup Match. Stay safe, and please practice Safe 6. keep 6 feet apart, and wear a mask. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Wilson. Before I go to the next minister, my office has received a number of questions surrounding the ending of the employment benefit to people who are unable to work through no fault of their own as a result of COVID-19. The first question is about the schedule of payments. The next payments will be made at the end of next week, and there will be no payment made this week, Friday. The benefit ends after a maximum of 18 weeks of payments. This is made up of the original 12-week benefit, plus the initial 4-week extension, and the further 2-week extension announced last week. Individuals started to receive the benefit at different times, therefore the end times will vary. However, persons who receive the benefit at the first week will be eligible for the full 18 weeks. You do not have to reapply to receive the 2-week extension. And this extension was granted to give those who came onto the benefit in the very first weeks the ability to apply for financial assistance and to give them time to submit their application, and so their application can be processed. Applications for financial assistance can be found in the lobby of Global House at 43 Church Street. Once the application has been completed, it can be returned to the secure drop box also located on the ground floor of Global House. So far, just over 100 people have submitted an application for financial assistance who were on the unemployment benefit. It is important to note that not everyone who is on the unemployment benefit will be able to qualify for financial assistance. For those persons who apply for financial assistance and do not qualify, the government is developing a supplemental unemployment benefit. The Minister of Labor will release the details of this benefit next week, but it is critically important that everyone is aware that you must apply for financial assistance so you can go through the assessment process. If you do not qualify for financial assistance, you will then be able to qualify for the supplemental benefit. But you must go through the process to ensure that your needs are accurately assessed. Many in Bermuda are starting to prepare for the 2-day cut match holiday. I now invite the Minister of National Security to give an update on what her ministry is doing to prepare for the holiday. Minister Ming.
Good evening, Bermuda. This weekend provides an opportunity for the island to come together to celebrate our Emancipation heritage once again. Even though we won't be celebrating the annual Cricket Classic this year, it's still a holiday. And it's our expectation that many of our residents will be heading to our beaches and parks and spending considerable time on the water over the long holiday weekend. I would like to reiterate that our joint community engagement teams comprising of the Bermuda Police Service and the Royal Bermuda Regiment will be actively visible over the cut match holiday. Please note that the Bermuda Police Service has a robust policing plan in place in order to ensure public safety. With the expectation of large gatherings, they will be present at beaches such as Horseshoe Bay Beach, Clearwater Beach, and other frequently attended beaches and park areas. On the topic of events and gatherings of more than 50 individuals, we continue to urge those in attendance to adhere to the terms and conditions as set out by the Ministry of National Security. At all times, please practice the appropriate health and safety measures such as physical distancing, mask wearing, and proper hand hygiene. We are also urging the public to use common sense when it comes to alcohol consumption over the holiday period. As you all know, the BPS will be conducting roadside sobriety checks across the island over the holiday weekend. As it relates to recreational boating over the holiday, the BPS and the Coast Guard will be present on our waters to ensure that the marine environment is as safe as possible. The Coast Guard and the Coast Guard Reserve, comprising of police officers, Royal Bermuda Regiment soldiers, and reserve police officers, will be operating 24 hours a day across Bermuda's waters, including up to 12 miles from shore. Regarding the COVID-19 regulations, boaters should beware of the following. Social distancing on boats must be adhered to. Raft-ups are allowed, but the right precautions must be in place, such as the wearing of masks if 3 feet of distancing cannot be maintained. Raft-ups must not exceed 50 people. Some general water safety points to know. File a float plan with a friend or the Bermuda Maritime Operations Center before leaving shore. Boaters must have the appropriate safety equipment on board, such as life jackets, a working VHF radio, and navigation lights. Boaters should not exceed the 5-knot speed limit. Drinking. As a reminder, operating a vessel under the influence is prohibited. Music. The public is reminded to be courteous to other recreational boaters when playing loud music on the water. Jet skis. Over the Cup Match weekend, in accordance with the Marine Board Notice 2020, jet skis are prohibited from entering the areas of Paradise Lakes and Mangrove Bay. And to quote the notice, any person operating a personal watercraft, commonly known as a jet ski, is prohibited from entering these areas of water between 5 a.m. Thursday, July 30th, 2020, to 11 p.m. Sunday, August 2nd, 2020. The areas include Paradise Lakes, including all waters between Hawkins Island, Nelly Island, Ports Island, Long Island, Beta Island, Gamma Island, Delta Island, Ipsil Island, Zeta Island, Iota Island, Eta Island, Marshall's Island, and Fern Island. Additionally, the areas of Mangrove Bay in Somerset, Watford Bridge, Kings Point, Somerset Long Bay, Cambridge Beaches in Somerset, and Daniels Head to Floral Point are also off limits to jet skis. Ultimately, we wish to ensure a safe and peaceful time on the water for recreational boaters. Anyone violating these regulations could face prosecution. If anyone wishes to report a breach on land or water, they can do so by calling 211. I wish to make the public aware that in the event that we have any antisocial behavior or violence of any kind, the Gang Violence Reduction Team and our Coordinated Crisis Response Team will be on standby this holiday weekend to mitigate any matters. Moving on from Cup Match expectations, I would like to take a moment to highlight and remind the public as to the guidelines for indoor dining. Please remember this. All staff must wear masks at all times. Guests must wear face masks whilst being seated and all other times when they're not at their table. Physical distancing should be maintained at least 6 feet when queuing. Guests must use hand sanitizer or wash hands before entering the establishment. Clear signage must be provided at the entrance to the establishment and within the premises in relation to regulations. Face masks being worn, physical distancing, and hand hygiene is a must. A copy of the guidance document must be prominently displayed within the establishment. The establishment must have systems in place to ensure physical distance in restroom facilities, as well as a robust cleaning regime. Contact tracing measures should also be in place to ensure adequate tracing in the event of an outbreak. Measures such as tables should be numbered, service names visible, and details of each diner should also be recorded, including date of visit, time, address, and contact information. These contact tracing procedures have been implemented as they are an essential part in combating any outbreak from a communicable disease. Remember, we are still battling COVID-19 on the island. It's essential that we have procedures in place to assist with tracing any occurrence of an outbreak. It is going to take every one of us to do our part and assist where we can. If you visit any establishments and you observe behaviors where the COVID-19 guidelines are not being adhered to, please mention it to them, and also follow up by calling 211 as well. We have weathered this virus quite well thus far, and it is my hope that we will not see a spike in cases after the holiday is over. Finally, Bermuda, I wish all of you a happy, safe 2020 Cup Match, Emancipation Day, and Merry Prince Day holiday. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Ming. And now ask the Minister of Public Works to give an update regarding the beachgoers and the campers and what they need to know in order to be safe this holiday weekend. Minister Birch?
I thought I was in the wrong place. Sorry? I thought I was in the wrong place. You were going to announce something else. Sorry. Good afternoon. Good evening. I'm pleased to provide a further update and reminders for this Cup Match weekend. Firstly, both the Ministry of National Security and the Cabinet Committee have struggled with requests for large gatherings. I note the fulsome explanation by the Minister of National Security, so I won't repeat what Minister Ming has already said. With regard to the current proviso that all liquor license establishments close at midnight, this restriction will remain in place and be reviewed at next Monday's regularly scheduled Cabinet Committee meeting. Regarding activities of the Cup Match, as you know, overnight camping is allowed over the weekend with the following specificity. Campers and picnickers will be allowed to erect camping and picnicking equipment and property on, as of today, the 28th of July. However, camping is only permitted from tomorrow, Wednesday the 29th of July, through Monday the 3rd of August. Gates are open today, so patrons have the opportunity to get their equipment and property into the parks and beaches until 9:30 p.m. tomorrow, the 29th of July, after which time park ranger staff on duty will be locking those gates. All equipment and property must be removed by Tuesday, the 4th of August, 2020, or it will be deemed abandoned and disposed of. Maintenance staff will be collecting trash and cleaning bathrooms during the Cup Match holiday and weekend. Park ranger staff will patrol the parks and beaches, enforcing the park regulations and addressing any other incidents in conjunction with the Bermuda Police Service and the Bermuda Regiment. Staff will be assigned to control traffic flow and parking at the following locations: Horseshoe Bay, Warwick Long Bay, Elba Beach Tribe Road 4B, and Clearwater Beach Park and Cooper's Island Park and Nature Reserve. Horseshoe Bay, due to the popularity on Emancipation Day, Thursday the 30th of July 2020, will be managed as follows. The Department of Park staff, in conjunction with officers of the Bermuda Police Service, Bermuda Regiment, and St. John's Ambulance, will be on duty. Traffic flow and parking will be controlled, and once the parking lot is full, access will be dropping off only until spaces are made available. There may be times when the parking lot is closed to all traffic in order to clear any congestion. Patrons are advised that the closure of Horseshoe Bay will be at 8 p.m. when patrons must start clearing the beach in order for the cleaning to begin for the use on Merry Prince Day, Friday the 31st of July. Park and beach users are reminded not to park on double yellow lines or block the gates, as they must remain clear at all times for access by Department of Parks maintenance and patrol vehicles, as well as emergency vehicles from the uniformed services. For safety, the following will not be permitted: no bonfires, especially at Cooper's Island and Nature Reserve; no excessively loud music; no dogs on the beaches; no horses on the beaches; no vehicles inside the parks after the gates are closed. Clean up your own trash. Leave the areas as you find them. Camping on Coney Island this year is prohibited due to the structural integrity and dangerous passage of the Bailey Bridge. These regulations are covered under the National Parks Act, and as such, I will consider behavior of a Cup Match in deciding further relaxations, whether they remain in place or are amended in some form. The cooperation of patrons using the parks and beaches over the holiday period is appreciated. All of these measures are being relaxed because of our good behavior thus far and following of the rules. We are still in a pandemic, but we also recognize that we must gradually relax the rules. It's vitally important that in considering our actions going forward, that we all must be cognizant and careful to make decisions that do not put our families and fellow citizens at risk regarding COVID. I'd like to slip in a comment on the two recently announced economic stimulus programs. The Water and Wastewater Master Plan for Southside St. David's and St. George's, the first phase of which involves 7 tender packages at a value of $5 million being let early in August, and the construction of the Ottawa A. Simmons International Arbitration Center, where a groundbreaking ceremony took place earlier today in the presence of executives from Millhouse Engineering and Construction and the man of the hour, Mr. Ottawa Simmons. I'd like to remind the public that due to the Cup-Match holiday, 30th and 31st of July, garbage normally collected on those days will be collected on Saturday, the 1st of August. And recyclables normally collected on Thursday and Friday will be collected tomorrow in place of Thursday, and Saturday, the 1st of August, in place of Friday. Please place garbage out for collection no later than 7:30 a.m. Recyclables must be placed out for collection in a blue or clear bag or one of the specially marked blue wheelie bins. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish everyone a happy Cup Match. Go Somerset, of course. And thank you, Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Colonel Birch. It was great to join you earlier today for the groundbreaking ceremony for the Ottawa Simmons International Arbitration Center. And as you mentioned, it's projects like this that will ensure Bermudians are able to get back to work as we work to rebuild Bermuda's economy. As we look at more seats becoming available for travelers to the island, as airlines increase their flights, more hotels will begin to open, and the number of hotel rooms available will increase, therefore providing more opportunities for Bermudians to return to work. It is anticipated that by the end of August, the number of hotel rooms will almost triple from 345 to 948. This is good news for the employees at the hotels that are planning to open, and the government will continue to work with our hoteliers to provide the support required for their employees during this time of transition. As we head into the Cup Match weekend, I just want to pause and reflect on the significance of the holiday. The first day is Emancipation Day, recognizing the abolition of slavery in Bermuda. This year, for the first time, we will recognize the second day of Cup Match as Mary Prince Day. Mary Prince is a Bermudian national hero, a black woman whose definitive narrative revealing the harsh injustices endured by black people in Bermuda in the early 1800s formed a critical contribution to the movement for the abolition of slavery. We honor her for her bravery and her courage, and we're proud that we celebrate Mary Prince Day for the first time this year. But as we talk and reflect on the holiday, I often speak about the new normal, and many of us will be practicing it this weekend. But while we celebrate and reflect this weekend, we must also be mindful of the tough times that are to come, the struggle that will test us as a country. It is important that as your Premier and your government, we are real and honest with all Bermudians. The new normal will not be just about social distancing. It will be about how we collectively cope during a period of great economic challenge. It will be about how we all play our part to participate and be productive in our economy wherever we can. It will be about how we save and invest in each other. It'll be about how we work to be our brother and our sister's keeper. And it'll be about how we look out for those who are less fortunate than us and strive to assist those who will be challenged over the next few months. And I make no bones about it. We are certainly going to be in for a period of economic difficulty. So our celebrations must be tempered with the reality of what is to come. As I've given the assurance at many times, the government will not abandon people. Just like we innovated as a people to stay ahead of the virus, we must collectively be as innovative to thrive as we work together to build our economy. But it's important to note that the government cannot do it all by itself, and it's going to require a collective effort of all persons in this country moving and rowing in the same directions. So though I'm concerned of the challenges ahead, I have no doubt that if we remain united, as a country, we will be able to prevail. Let us carry the spirits of unity into this holiday and beyond, as that is the only thing that will ensure that Bermuda can emerge from this upcoming period of economic challenge as a stronger and more united country. As I conclude my formal remarks, I want to make sure that we continue to take precautions as we enjoy this holiday weekend. Physical distancing, wearing a mask, and appropriate hand hygiene is a must. With the announcement of the 2 more imported cases from returning residents, COVID-19 is still very much a factor in our daily lives, and we must remain strong, vigilant, and united as a country to keep this virus at bay so that we can continue the work to rebuild our economy. With that, I'm happy to take questions from members of the media here this evening.
Good evening. With BHB's lab now online, what is the upper limit on the number of tests Bermuda can do in a day, and how do you see it meeting peak air arrival demand?
There certainly is sufficient laboratory capacity to handle the demand, including the uptake in airlines that we're anticipating from next month onward. There are challenges, however, with respect to manpower as it relates to swabbing, testing, and processing and reporting. That is one of the bigger challenges. The testing sites, as you can appreciate, are averaging 400 persons a day, and therefore there will be occasional wait times whilst persons are waiting to be tested. However, I think it's more important to stress the fact that this is as a result of our diligence in our aggressive testing and wanting to make sure that we keep our community safe, which is why we have the testing regime. So there will be wait times with respect to getting the testing on the requisite days, depending on your travel and whether you have pre-test or arrival test.
Sorry, but part of the question was, what's the maximum amount that we can test in a day?
Like I said, we're testing about 400 a day, but we have capacity with respect to the testing at MDL, and as I've indicated last week, the hospitals come on board as well, so they are now able to test all of their admissions as well as patients that are transferring from various wards, as well as their staff. So those persons who would have previously been tested at MDL are now being tested on the hospital.
Around the world, the PCR tests are known to have an average of 1 in 5 recording a false negative, and roughly 1 in 20 or higher than that as a false positive. What's Bermuda's average?
Well, we know that there's no perfect tests, that there are all tests, including the PCR, though it's the gold standard, it is not a perfect test. But what we do use is epidemiological information as well as a clinical assessment with respect to any of the tests or the cases that are made out. And if in doubt, we retest.
Okay, I'm sorry, but do we have any figures on how accurate our numbers are compared to the rest of the world?
No, I think the main point that has to be emphasized is the fact that if in doubt, we retest. So from an epidemiological standpoint as well as a clinical assessment, those are what factors into the actual test. And then if in doubt, which is critically important, then we simply retest.
Thank you. Please talk about the challenges getting PPE and testing kits in Regents now compared to earlier in the pandemic. i.e. has the worldwide surge continued to make things difficult or more difficult?
Well, you are correct. There are worldwide shortages, as we've spoken about previously, and anyone can look on the news and see that it's occurring. However, we continue to source from multiple locations, and our procurement is very, very advanced. And if it means going to China to access certain PPE that's necessary, we will do that, or likewise if we can get it as close as in America. But we continue to source and procure from a number of areas and a number of locations.
Thank you. After being made aware of complaints from the public, Bermuda Broadcasting checked the government website for scheduling an appointment to get a COVID test, and there was no spaces available for July or August. Why is that?
We have a very aggressive testing regime, principally to try as best as possible to minimize the importation of COVID so that we can protect our community. Persons that do not have a pre-test upon arrival, test on arrival, test on day 4, test on day 8, day 10 and 14. So it's a very aggressive testing regime that also is applicable to our visitors. So therefore, there are going to be a number of persons. If we have 700 people that are coming in and they're staying for a week, then we're going to have virtually 700 persons testing on day 4, 8, 10, depending on their circumstances. So it's important to note that it is entirely relevant that we have an aggressive testing regime, because that's the only way we can keep our community safe. As I've indicated previously, it's important to identify, which is through testing, and then immediately isolate for positive cases.
Thank you. Mr. Premier, why aren't people who've paid into the Bermuda Hotel's pension plan allowed to take money from it like others from their private pension plans? We've had people tell us this is putting them in the industry which is hurting the most through tough financial position.
Thank you very much for your question, Don, and thanks for sending it in advance to make sure that we can provide the answer to the persons in the public, because I'm certain that there's a large number of hotel employees who want the information. I know there's persons who have come to us to ask those questions as well. The recent amendments that were made to the National Pension Scheme, Occupational Pensions Act, to allow for the one-time withdrawals of $12,000 were only for defined contribution pension plans. And of course, there are two different types of plans. Private sector pensions are typically defined contribution plans where you put the money you put in and invest as the money that you get out, versus a defined benefit plan where your benefit is calculated on the years of service and where you end in a different calculation, and it's not determined by the amount of money of which you put in and how you choose to invest that money. Unfortunately, as the hotel pension plan is a defined benefit pension plan, those $12,000 one-time refunds are not permitted. It is important to note that we did consult prior to the law being introduced to the House of Assembly, and the concerns were raised by the trustees of the Hotel Pension Fund, who requested an exemption from the refund legislation. And that is because forcing the plan to provide mandatory refunds would cause a huge financial challenge for the Hotel Pension Fund. And also the Hotel Pension Fund is covered by the collective bargaining agreement with the Bermuda Industrial Union, and any further changes would have also had to be agreed by the union. And so it's important to note that if these withdrawals were allowed, the fund may become an unstable position where it is not able to meet its obligations going forward. That doesn't happen in a defined contribution plan, because your withdrawals are not affecting anyone else. They're only affecting your individual pot. But with this, it does affect the broader pot. And this is why that plan was excluded. It is important to note that members of the Hotel Pension Fund can apply for financial hardship withdrawals, which are under the Act. And financial hardship withdrawals, I believe, allow you to withdraw a maximum of 20%. And those can be withdrawn for eligible educational expenses, any uncovered medical expenses, and any uncovered medical expenses, funeral expenses, rental arrears where there is an imminent threat of eviction, mortgage arrears where there is an imminent threat of foreclosure, and for the above hardships, persons can apply to the Pension Commission and they can get an application form. So though the $12,000 one-time COVID-19 withdrawal is not applicable to persons in the hotel pension fund, persons who in the hotel pension fund who are experiencing those hardships are able to make an application to get support and relief for those hardships. And I hope that answers that question for members of the public who are wanting the answer.
All right, thank you. My last question, and I don't know who's best suited to answer this, maybe the health minister, how can you explain the dramatic surge in infections across the U.S. and around the world and the decline in the number of recent new positive cases arriving in Bermuda when compared with the higher number of positive cases that were reported during the springtime? Statistically, we should expect to see higher positive cases arriving in Bermuda with the rising numbers in the U.S., and yet we are not seeing this. What do you think is the reason?
You want me to handle it?
Sure.
Thank you. It's very simple, Dawn. We have the most aggressive testing regime in the entire world. That is the reason why. So people have to take pre-tests, and people have to know if they're going to come here to get multiple tests while they're here. It is something that is discouraging some people from traveling. But that is the only reason why. So I accept your argument from a statistical basis, and all other things being equal, if we were not testing people prior to travel, if we just had open flights and open arrivals, then certainly that I think would be the case. But I think from the perspective of where we had it, we said that we were going to open it up under very strict conditions, and I think those strict conditions have seen that there have not been very many imported cases. And I think it's incredible that I don't think we've had any imported cases from visitors. All of the cases that have been positive imported cases have been returning residents. So I think that we have been successful in striking that balance, and we're going to continue to, as I say, work for that balance. But I think that's where it is. And so this is a learning experience for all of us. As I said in my remarks, the government and the country has to continue to be innovative. We have to look at the scientists, listen to what the scientists are telling us, make our assessments as policymakers on the goals of which we're trying to achieve, and find that right middle ground. And I think we've struck that middle ground, and as time goes on, we'll be able to look at where we are at the end of July, see what adjustments may need to be made, look at where we go as we go through August, see what other adjustments need to be made. But I think that we are making a success of the opening of our economy, but it all relies on us to continue doing our part to make sure that our brothers and sisters who are members of the hotel pension fund and those people who are working in our tourism industry can continue to be supported by visitor arrivals.
Thank you. I hope you all have a lovely cup match holiday, even if you support red and blue.
Good afternoon, Owen Johnson Barnes with the Royal Gazette. My first question is for Colonel Birch. There was the groundbreaking earlier today at the Ottawell Simmons International Arbitration Center. While there, you mentioned that this project would be moving forward with no initial cost to the Bermuda government. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, the last time we heard that was the airport project, and as we know, we've recently received quite a hefty bill from that. Can you say what measures are being taken to make sure that this project doesn't become a follow-up to that?
Well, I'm not going to make the decision alone for a start, that we will use the best brains in the country to ensure that that happens. That is why the financial piece of this is with the Ministry of Finance, who's the expert. So Public Works is not going out on its own on a flight of fancy and deciding what it is. We are going to ensure that there's no upfront cost from the government. We obviously have to pay for it. And so we will have a rent-to-buy package, if you like, over a number of years in order to for them to make their money and us to have a product that we can use during their time.
Can you say...
It's important to note that we're not privatizing the building. It's like the former government privatized the airport. And I think there is a very important distinction there.
Can you describe at all the tendering process involved with this project?
I'm sorry?
The tendering process involved with the project.
Nothing has gone out to tender yet, but it will go out to every local, well, I don't even know if they have to go to tender. They're a private entity. I mean, they didn't go to tender to hire the Bermudian architect that is currently done the plans for the project. They haven't been out to tender for a number of other minor projects that they have been involved in, and that will be a matter for them.
Are you concerned that that might potentially increase costs in the long term for us?
No. I think that their expertise in building buildings probably is similar or superior to many of the contractors that we have in Bermuda now. And so we are relying on that expertise, and not me, because I'm not an engineer or contractor. And so we are using people in-house who are able to assess these things. Every project that the Ministry of Public Works puts out to tender, we actually know before we go to tender what our experts within the ministry estimate that project to cost, that project is going to cost. And so you have right out of the gates an indication of the ballpark that tenders should be in. I mean, you may be aware, we had a recent case where, I'm trying to remember what was demolished now. But I was asked questions about it in Parliament, and the bidding was so far and wide. It was 10,000 in one bid and 1,200 or 2,200 as the lowest bidder, and our bid was 10,000 as well. And I was asked, was I concerned about the number? No, not at all. If a contractor makes a mistake on a bid, they have to eat that. They can't come back and say, well, by the way, I made a mistake that was out by 10 grand. I'd like to, have you pay it still. We're not doing that.
Now, is the government looking at other the PPPs moving forward?
Absolutely. The opportunity that it presents there for us is not to increase the financial burden of the country, but also get people working and providing support and assistance in upgrading our infrastructure.
Now, the appropriate minister is not here, so unfortunately it has to be a bit of a broad question, but we have received some comments from members of the public who are concerned about their children going back to school in a very rapidly approaching time frame. Can anyone discuss what measures are being put in place to make sure teachers and students will be safe once the schools reopen?
Well, I think that there's a number of us, or at least Minister and myself, him here, kids are still in school too. So those concerns are certainly there for all of us, as well as the parents in Bermuda. I am confident that the Ministry of Education, in conjunction with the Ministry of Health, supported by the Ministry of Public Works, and also supported by the Ministry of Transport, will have the plan that will work to ensure that we can get our students back to school, back learning in a safe environment. I have no doubt about that, and it has been a lot of work. The Minister of Education gave a number of ministerial statements, has given a number of briefings on these, and will continue to do more briefings. We'll continue to work with our union partners in advancing this, and we'll take all the necessary precautions which are required to ensure that our children remain safe. But I think what's most important for us to ensure that our children remain safe is to continue our very aggressive testing regime at the borders and continue to make sure that internally in the country we are continuing to maintain our social distance, making sure that we are doing the things which are necessary to minimize if there were a possible imported and undetected case, even though persons who are visitors have 5 tests within 14 days, even if there were, that we minimize the chance and the opportunity for that virus to continue to be transmitted. So I understand that there will be parents that don't want to send their children back to school, and if they do not, they may have the option not to do so. I'm not going to walk around to parents and say you must send your child back to school. I am confident in the precautions that are being taken by the Ministry of Education. I will be sending my daughter to school right back across the street. My son will be going back to nursery school. And I think that as a country, we have to make sure that we recognize that we have to learn how to live with the threat of this virus. And I think we're going to continue to live with the threat of this virus. You wish to add anything, Minister?
No, the previous is absolutely correct. We've been in dialogue with the Ministry of Health, with the Minister of Education, recognizing that that is an ultimate objective of his and the government's is for the children to return to school in a safe environment. So therefore, public health is providing guidance and information to assist with that and transitioning into that, and with the objective of opening the schools up in September safely.
And Mr. Premier, you mentioned earlier that the hope is that more flights will be coming back online fairly soon. Can you give us any update on the progress of reopening the island to tourism?
I think that we are making steady progress. I think it's also important to note, and I just want to thank the Bermudians who are doing their part. As I said inside of my statement, we all have to do our part to support our economy, and that means, buying Bermuda, that means patronizing local establishments, that means possibly doing things you didn't have. And if we remember that Bermudians spend $300 million a year on external travel, if that money is able to be spent inside of our economy, it will be of great support to our hotels, and it'll be great support for our local restaurants, and it'll be great support for our local retailers. So we have to continue to do our part. I recognize and understand that some of our hotels are full over this Cup Match weekend, and that is a great sign as we push forward. What I've heard from our hoteliers in the conversations that I've had with them over the past few weeks is that Bermuda is gaining a reputation as a safe place to travel. Some people don't like the inconvenience of multiple tests, but other people do recognize that that means that they are in a safe country where they can go around and not, of course, be completely free, but go around without the risk of contracting a virus that can be very serious in certain instances. So we are making progress. The airline schedule is shifting. So there were some airlines that were expecting to put on more flights. I think Delta was expecting to go to 7, or they're cutting back from 7 days a week to 5 days a week. Air Canada is not increasing their schedule that much. I think British is adding 1 flight. And of course, the addition of JetBlue flights from New York, daily JetBlue flights will make a difference. But we're just going to assess as we go forward and continue to take a step-by-step approach. So I think we've responded well. Our hoteliers have responded well. I know that there's a number of persons who are looking to get back to work. The innovative things that are being done at places like Coral Beach, where they're getting their own planes to come down and to bring people, I think it shows that we are being innovative to make sure that we can enjoy at least a little bit of a boost from a tourist season. And so I'm pleased with the progress and the work of which all of our tourism partners are doing to make sure that is a success.
Thank you very much, and once again, a happy Cup Match to everyone.
Thank you, Owen.
For exemption have been received and how many have been approved?
Maybe I knew that you were going to ask me that question this evening. I can say so far that we have received 14 requests, and so far we've 7 have been approved.
Okay, thank you. In accordance with COVID-19 regulations, persons who breach quarantine requirements upon their return to the island could be fined and/or face imprisonment. Can you provide an update on the person who recently breached quarantine and returned to work prior to being cleared to do so?
I actually do not have any information on that, Mackenzie, sorry.
I'm not 100% sure which individual you're speaking about. I suspect it was the one that was reported a couple weeks ago. And as I reported previously to that question, we are dealing with it on a case-by-case basis. So the matter has been investigated, and again, we're dealing with them on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes circumstances are such that, for example, one individual was a minor that had attended at a restaurant. So they're all being dealt with the severity warranted depending on the case.
Okay, thank you. Now that the lockdown is over and the curfew has been lifted, can you advise if the shelter located at Cedar Bridge Academy is still up and running for those who need it?
I do believe that once the curfew ended, I think the shelter ended its operations.
Okay, thank you. Minister Wilson, in a recent British Broadcasting Corporation podcast, drug abuse experts spoke of the likelihood and potential for a post-lockdown drug binge. Can you advise if there have been any known increases in drug use over the last few months?
Nothing has been reported to me through the Ministry of Health. I don't know if National Drug Commission has received any type of data to suggest that there's been any increases in utilization post the shelter in place. However, to my knowledge, with respect to from a Ministry of Health point of view, I haven't had any, that hasn't been information that's been brought to my attention.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, will the pop-up testing be available over the Cup Match holiday, and if so, at what locations?
Absolutely, because we have flights that are coming in, and everybody has to test on those days 4, 8, 10, and 14. So if those days fall within the holiday, then they will be required to test. I cannot say specifically where the locations are, but anybody that needs that information can either call the hotline or alternatively go to the government website that will indicate. I believe one of the sites is the cathedral, but I don't want to speak out of school. But that information is made available publicly, as well as when the persons receive their notification, they are also told of the location.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate members of the media for their questions this evening. We will be back with you again next week, Thursday, so a good 9 days before the next official press conference, and opportunity for members of the media to ask questions. Of course, the Ministry of Health will continue to put out information to update to update on our testing status and the results of which are happening at our borders and throughout our country. I just want to remind all persons to please make sure they take care this weekend, and remember that we are far from being out of the woods, and the only reason that we've been able to be so successful, and the only reason why we have not had the rolling back of restrictions of which we've seen in many other countries and many other islands, is because we have done what we needed to do. The only way that we can continue on that path is if we continue doing what it is that we need to do. So I wish all of Bermuda a happy Emancipation Day on Thursday and a happy Mary Prince Day on Friday. Wish everyone a very good evening, and I want to say thank you, Bermuda.
With Bermuda's annual Cup Match Classic sidelined amid the COVID-19 pandemic, CITV is gearing up to show a series of exciting programs featuring some of the most sensational and breathtaking matches played over the last 30 years between the St. George
To Basin, and Basin comes forward, and he's out. Catch. He's out. A catch. He's out.
finest hours of the intense matches played between the two teams as they battled for the coveted Cup Match trophy.
Oh, he's bold! He is bold!
Tune in to CITV on Thursday, July 30th, Friday, July 31st, and August 1st and 2nd to catch highlights of the spirit and history of Bermuda's annual Cup Match Classic.
My new master was a captain who lived at Spanish Point. After parting with my mother and sisters, I followed him to his store, and he gave me into the charge